very warm welcome to our newest episode of our videocast series, Unfiltered Stories. And today's topic couldn't be more timely because we will try to put the world to right on all things software development and Gen AI. And the market appears to be shifting. I think clients appear to be moving from just trying to educate themselves around the topics, and we see there's plethora of POCs, proof of concepts. But now we're starting to see that clients are trying to finally put things into production, and that on an industrial scale. Yet, as they do so, perhaps not surprisingly, they run into new challenges, be it some implementation challenges, or they stumble across new risk. And with that, I'm really delighted to welcome Aneesh Nathani from Cybage. Anish, warm welcome. Very briefly, rank and serial number.
Really good to be here, Tom. Yeah, I'm Aneesh. I head our GenAI Competency Center, so a central team of people who focus on both internal research as well as customer projects on GenAI. And I'm representing Cybage. We're a digital product engineering company, upwards of 7,000 people strong with, many happy clients. So it's
Yeah,
good to be here, Tom. Yeah.
thanks to have you. And there's still so much noise. There's no other way to describe it on Gen AI. How's Cybage guiding its clients around the impact, especially on the software development cycle? And just building on that, also, what's the impact on talent, both on your side, but also on the client side?
Yeah. So digital product engineering is our bread and butter as a company and has been for a while before Gen AI as well. Gen AI is definitely enhancing parts of the SDLC. If I have to call out specific areas, because you're right, I think there is too much extremely high level conversations about it. For example, in QA, we're seeing efficiencies around test case creation, especially when you have a ready repository and you want to expand your scenario coverage, both for unit test cases as well as system integration testing. As LLMs become more multimodal, there are some really interesting use cases around front end testing, user experience testing, and similar types of use cases for more flexible reporting, more upwards in the stack, and then also, of course, code generation and productivity on that front. So we're investing very heavily in internal research. I would say that our main ethos at Cybage is to sort of eat our own dog food. So we're conducting a very large experiment, treatment and control groups equipped with GenAI tooling and not. And we're seeing some really interesting results there. There are definitely enhancements and efficiency improvements, like I said, but some really interesting caveats, about it being extremely effective in greenfield projects with new code generation from scratch. And as sprints go on, those gaps end up closing down a little bit, right? There is still efficiency, but things around maintainability becomes more important. If I've accepted all the suggestions of a copilot, am I in a position to maintain that code base as a developer? And those are some things that we really focus on, training our own employees and governing our best practices and giving our clients that knowledge that we come with in projects.
That's great. I was double clicking on your point of experimenting at scale. Now, can you share what the outcomes, but also the learnings from the early deployments? What did really surprise you in that, if any?
Yeah, definitely. So on one hand is the deployments around the SDLC improvements, and for that, there are definitely some quicker wins, like I said, for those greenfield projects, which is very tempting to then draw much larger conclusions, right? For like build a web app in 1 week, and GenAI is really great at that. But there are definitely considerations in terms of conceptual understanding of developers on a project, understanding all different parts of a code base, and being able to debug when the time comes. And we're also seeing the need for senior seasoned developers in team projects that we staff and teams that we lead and pods that we lead. The need for this peer review mechanism outside of just Gen AI code suggestions is really important. That's on the developer productivity front. On the other side, which is we're also helping our clients push their own Gen AI features and solutions into production, either as features onto their software products or as other products for internal efficiency. That's a different ball game around how you actually QA those Gen AI applications, how you measure ROI. And I'd love to get into some of those points around different parts of a stack that you have to think about to really gain the best value from your Gen AI applications.
Okay. Great insights, and Anish. Can you share some of your experience and your learnings? And what's the best way to think about how do you measure progress with Gen AI?
Yeah, and that's something we care a lot about in all of our deployments and all of our projects. I think it's important to pick use cases where the KPIs are defined, at least to start off with. If you're entering a use case with undefined KPIs, it becomes much harder to track and measure progress against those. The other thing also is that, identify the main bottleneck in the process that you're trying to solve. If the main bottleneck is continuous back and forth with two people, GenAI might not be as effective in solving that, right? So we focus a lot on identifying true breakdowns in a current process and seeing if GenAI is a fit for that process and tracking a GenAI solution against certain KPIs that we measure at a regular basis. A sort of a classic use case, but we have some really successful implementations of GenAI applications that are really optimizing support, be it L1, L2, or L3, and also increasing resolution rates and self-service rates from customers, measurable, tangible, and then once you have those wins, you can go on to slightly more intangible or more complicated use cases. So that's been our approach, and we use a mixture of both. With GenAI, nothing beats manual testing from subject matter experts, as well as some automation frameworks to measure those responses, if it's a chat type of application, or if it's an agent that's making decisions for you, then measuring accuracies and different things that we use to make sure that we're getting the most of our Gen AI apps, both internally and for customers.
That's great. Let's zoom in on quality assurance and quality engineering. What's your experience, but also your guidance to your clients? And how shall we think about assuring the outcomes of GenAI? Because for me, that's something different. And we just did together a study on quality assurance and quality engineering in the context of transformation and GenAI. And if I'm honest, I was quite underwhelmed from many discussions, where many executives either couldn't or didn't want to articulate the problem statement around assuring outcomes. What's the experience and how are you guiding your clients around assuring GenAI outcomes?
Yeah, no, this is a great question because there's definitely a disconnect, I think, in the media that we consume just through like superficial articles versus people who are actually getting their hands dirty and getting their hands burnt a little bit, right, in their initial Gen AI implementations. So I think there are different ways to measure it depending on, are you trying to implement something for your customers? Is it a measurable feature? We work a lot with ISVs, software vendors. So for them, it's a feature they're trying to implement on their current platform. So if that's the case, how are you monetizing it? How are you getting your customers to use it? And then customer feedback becomes a very primary direct input into your Gen AI applications. Similarly, for internal applications, Cybage, we use Gen AI for all of our knowledge management now. Many different departments use a central platform, which we've built from ground up, and we have complete end-to-end traceability, right? So traceability is obviously super important in the STLC before Gen AI with traceability and observability tools, and we focus on those practices even in Gen AI deployments to really trace usage, every prompt, every context getting retrieved for every prompt, every user feedback toggle. And once you have that repository of data is when you can start really estimating time savings and dollar savings for your Gen AI applications. But until you have that ecosystem in place, it's a bit like throwing darts in the dark. Yeah.
It's a great point, great insight. And just to close us out, is it really, are we right just to almost focus so much on Gen AI, or isn't the other way around? Don't we have to prepare our client base, or your client base, that is, for the evolution of AI? And Gen AI, of course, is top of mind for many executives, but the way at least I look at it, it's just, I think you're scratching the surface. There's so much more to come, so many things Gen AI actually isn't. What's your take? How are you guiding your clients around the evolution of AI? What's next?
No, definitely. I mean, even when we say Gen AI, right, that itself buckets so many different aspects of it: multimodality, images, videos, different size models. And I think people focus a little bit too much on just the model, and they think that if we need to stay competitive, we need to sort of get our NVIDIA GPUs and start training models for our enterprise. And in our experience, data and content maturity is the key factor that decides success of Gen AI applications, along with user education, user training, and user buy-in for those features. So in our Gen AI teams, we have Gen AI engineers along with data engineers, along with integration architects, along with content teams who are actually refining the content as well that gets fed into Gen AI applications. So I totally agree with you, Tom, that the AI is a much larger subject. We haven't even touched predictive models that we work on. But all of those things are just not possible unless you've done the groundwork of an integrated and mature data ecosystem, which is what we thrive at and have been thriving at way before Gen AI. So I definitely agree with you on that, Tom. Yeah.
It's a great insight, a great way to close out the discussion. And I think we keep saying, I think enterprise adoption of Gen AI, it's all about integration, data integration, but also governance. And if anything, it's not just the technology governance or just talking about ethics, it's a much broader outcome-centric governance. But I guess there's more that should be probably the next discussion we do together. There's so much we have to do in terms of education. So look forward to more discussion. Anish, really appreciate all your insights.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this discussion again. Yeah. Thank you.